Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Eric with SweetSpotDFS, and welcome to my DFS strategy video for the 2022 Sony Open. Hopefully you had a chance to watch the preview video I put out yesterday, as I covered a lot of data points that I thought you guys need to know prior to building your DFS lineups. So in this video, we'll grab some of those data points and include it with the SweetSpot score and the Marquee tee time pairings before building lineups, which I'll do at the end of this video. If you haven't seen the preview video, don't worry. I'll provide a link top right hand corner. Go ahead, drill down on that, watch it, and you'll have a better sense of what I'll be doing in this video. Plus, it'll give you an opportunity to have another entry into the giveaways that I'm doing this week, which I'll be talking about here shortly. But as I like to remind you in all my videos, there are timestamps you guys can see either down in the description or on YouTube's progress bar. All you gotta do is hover over it and you'll see them there. Makes jumping around in these videos much simpler and easier. But yeah, let's go ahead. Let's get into the giveaways for this week. Like I said in the preview video, first giveaway is a subscriber giveaway. You need to be subscribed. Comment down below. Give me your 2 anchor plays this week. And you'll get a free entry into that giveaway. And then once we get to 275 subscribers, which we're 5 subscribers away. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Once we hit 275, we run this giveaway Sunday night during the review video. One of you lucky guys or girls out there will win $10. And you get another free entry by either retweeting this on Twitter or just engaging on Twitter in some fashion. I'd rather retweet. Yeah, let's just keep it that way. Retweet this on Twitter. Also, another giveaway that I'm going to do, I'll just show this on the screen really quick. The optimizer that I'll be using in this video, you guys can get your hands on this. Helps you build lineups. You can use a ton of different criteria. You can use the bucket system that I have over here. You can set your own ownerships however you want. You can lock in some of your golfers and build lineups that way. And then also you can edit this metric to whatever metric is yours. The higher the number, the more likely the optimizer will select that player. So that's all available to you, but it's not the only thing that's a part of this optimizer. You can run a lineup, save it, as I'll do here, and then check your progress of what's being saved here. So you can see all your lineups. You can also use this contest selection. So if I hit randomize, it'll grab whatever lineup that you've created or any of the lineups you've created. It randomizes the order and then it pastes it here. So it's a nifty way to mass enter your lineup. Super simple, super easy. You'll also get access to the dream sheet that we'll be talking about in this video, and also the bucket system itself for this tournament. So you get all of that information just by subscribing, commenting down below, and also emailing me at sweetspotdfs@gmail.com and letting me know you're interested in the optimizer. The third giveaway is a prize picks giveaway. All you have to do, sign up with prize picks if you haven't yet and you are in a state that allows it. Use the promo code SweetSpot and put 20 bucks in your account. You'll be entered into a giveaway to win $20. And as long as I've got people signed up, I will run giveaways every Sunday night. Just one giveaway, that is. We'll find one winner. Here's the beauty of it. Your entry's never going to go away. So as most contests, like my subscriber contests, once there's a winner, everything resets. That's not going to be the case for this prize picks giveaway. So you can look at it this way. You're going to win $20 one way or another if you sign up using prize picks. Link is in the description. That'll get you straight to the landing page with the promo code SweetSpot already populated. So it'll save you some time. But those are the giveaways this week. Let's go ahead. Let's get into this. Let me go ahead and put up SweetSpot ranks, the SweetSpot score. So as you see on the screen here, this is your top 20 of the SweetSpot ranks. Cameron Smith is number 1, Webb Simpson's number 2, Mark Leishman 3, Sung J M 4, and Hideki Matsuyama 5. You can see the rest of them on the screen. I'm not going to talk about each one of them. Number 20 is Chris Kirk. You can kind of see him on the screen, but not really. I always like to look through this with you guys here. and try to find some lower priced guys that kind of leapfrogged some of the higher priced guys, like a Billy Horschel at $8,700. To me, that's value. You know, I'm looking at a bunch of different stats. Let's talk about those stats. I usually do that right away. I'm sorry for not doing it right away this time. We're looking at official world golf ranking, looking at the 3 grass stat categories that I use. Overall grass average, top 10 success rate. Both of these stats go back to 2013. Although this says 2021 grass, what this is a full year's worth of data prior to this tournament. So it goes all the way back to the Sony Open of last year. So that's included here. It just has my own breakdown of how many points are allotted to these people based off of their grass stats, finishes, basically. Then we have course history, bogey avoidance, birdie or better. These are recent form stats. I wouldn't be too caught up on that. No one's really getting an advantage because we don't really have recent form. We have one tournament we can work with, and that's basically what's baked into those stats there, which I probably should just remove them. But again, no one's getting a huge boost there. And then I have season-long data here. DraftKings average. Again, this is one full year's worth of data. So this goes back to the Sony Open last year. We're looking at their DK average, their scoring average, what they shoot, you know, each round, how often their rounds are under 70, which I think is going to be a huge factor this week. Cut made percentage and DK top 10, their frequency of finishing inside the top 10 of DraftKings points in a tournament. And the beauty of this is if you do get that optimizer, you can actually sort by these stats and find your best players based off of that. So that's what's included in the score, which is over here. That score then translates into the rank over here. So going back to Billy Horschel, 8,700. To me, that's a really good value. Next up is Kokrak and Henley. Kokrak had a really miserable round of golf or a tournament last week. He finished dead last at the Tournament of Champions. That's not really a deterrent for me. He rates out really well for this tournament. He's in some pretty decent buckets. So I'm not gonna stay away from Jason Kokrak. Russell Henley's gonna be a very high-owned golfer. I don't think it really matters all that much. If he wins, just like Cameron Smith did last week at a high ownership, then you're going to be the odd one looking in, basically, wishing you had played Russell Henley. But those guys, pretty decent values in my opinion, same as Brendan Steele, $7,900. And then it kind of goes down to where you would anticipate seeing some of these guys. So I don't see really any other values when it comes to the sweet spot rank. So let's move on. And where we're going to go from here, because the sweet spot score is baked into this, are the marquee tee time pairings. And I should say this before I actually filter out. Marquee tee time pairings are figured out by taking the field size, which is 144 golfers. I am now using a new metric, which I think is a clever way to do this. I'm calling it the 59 club. So I'm taking 144. I'm multiplying it by 59%, so 0.59, and it's going to get me a number, which is 84 point something, but I'm rounding up to 85. So for each pairing, if their cumulative score, their sweet spot rank is under 85, I am highlighting their color green, a dark green. So this Billy Horschel, Abram Answer, and Harris English lineup, 7 plus 9 plus 12, we get 28. That's well under that 59 mark. So, well, 85, I should just say that. It's well under that 85 point mark. So they're getting highlighted. They're going to be a marquee tee time pairing. The ones here with light green are just over it. So if you add these up here, the Keith Mitchell, Brandon Grace, and Brendan Todd pairing equals 95. So it's super close. I do want to color it to say they're kind of on the fringe, just because it's worth playing in my opinion. So let's go ahead. Let's look at the marquee tee time pairings. And why I like doing this is because usually we find 2 golfers in the optimal lineup out of these guys. And really it's only 2. And it's Okay, I shouldn't say never. There's been one time in the last 60 weeks, 6-0, where a golfer from the same group finished inside the optimal lineup, or two golfers from the same group finished inside the optimal lineup. So if you are choosing someone like a Billy Horschel, don't pair him up with an Abraham Answer or a Harris English, or just play the odds. If I'm telling you 1 in 60 has occurred, can't think off the top of my head what that number is. 6%, right? Yeah, of course. So 6% of your lineups, sure, you can pair, you know, one, what do I want to call, combination from this group. But my advice, my general advice is just don't pair up a Billy Horschel with an Abraham Answer or a Harris English. The stats really aren't there that are going to provide success for you guys. Instead, pair up a Billy Horschel with either a Webb, Hideki, or Kevin Kisner. Or perhaps Seamus Power, Cameron Davis, Charles Howell III. Anything like that. And if you want, I've done this before. I will go Billy Horschel and I'll add him to a lineup with each of these guys. And I'll do that again with Abraham Answer. I'll do it with Harris English. And I'll work my way down. So that's one strategy that I've deployed in the past. Can't tell you I really had that much success doing that, but it's definitely a strategy for sure. I don't mind it. I'll say this really quickly. I've talked about permutations in the past, and permutations are just the amount of combinations of lineups you can create. When you do this strategy where you take a Billy Horschel, then you pair him up with a Webb Simpson and then 4 other golfers, and you take a Billy Horschel with Hideki Matsuyama and pair him up with 4 other golfers, and you do that, by the time that you've reached the last amount of combination of golfers you can have, you're already at lineup 96. So you only get one shot at building a Billy Horschel Webb Simpson lineup. Because once you go past this one lineup and you do it with everyone else, you have so many lineups already built that you don't get another opportunity to do a Billy Horschel Webb Simpson lineup. So maybe for you guys, you just want to just limit your exposure. Maybe you already know when you're looking on here, you're going to be like, yeah, I don't want to play Kevin Na. I just don't see a back-to-back title. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to play Cameron Smith because I just don't see a back-to-back week, victories for him. So I can exclude those 2 guys out. I also don't care for Charles Howell III because he's 80 years old, which is not true, but close. I don't want to play Kevin Kisner because he's going to have a huge hangover because of the Georgia Championship, the college football championship. Any reason you want to not play any of these guys just limits the amount of lineups you can create, which is a good thing. I shouldn't say the amount of lineups, the amount of combinations of lineups is, I don't know if that's the right way to word it, but hopefully you understand me. It just limits the amount of permutations you can create. That's the best way to say it. So do with that as you will. Again, we usually see 2 golfers from this list here inside the optimal lineup, and it's rarely ever in the same group. So it already narrows down who you can select or who you should start with, and really just any of these guys. I think that's a good place to start. Start with your 2 here, and if those are the golfers you want to put in the comment section to enter into those giveaways, all the better as well. We'll look at the honorable mentions, as I like to call these, in light green. There's only 2 groups to talk about: Keith Mitchell, Brandon Grace, Brendan Todd, and then Russell Henley, Emiliano Grillo, and Henrik Norlander. Here, what has happened in the past with honorable mention lineups is one of them finished inside the optimal lineup. And when I have like more than 3 groups to talk about, around 4 groups, we usually find 2 inside the optimal lineup. So very good chance that one of these golfers could be in the optimal lineup. And I know most of us probably want Russell Henley to be there, but hey, maybe it's Emiliano Grillo this week. Maybe it's Henrik Norlander. I'm not saying for certain that these honorable mentions, I don't have enough data to really back this up. And really, however you want to think of that data is up to you. You know, obviously it includes my score, my SweetSpot score, which has my own hand-picked stats. You know, if you don't feel comfortable with that, that's fine. Those other groups, though, I will say, it's hard to argue that those are not the marquee tee times. They're so good. These ones here, I don't mind if you don't care for them whatsoever. But yeah, that would be the SweetSpot rank. Those would be the marquee tee time pairings. Let's go into grass stats first before we go into the anchor buckets. So we're on Bermuda grass this week. I didn't include this in the preview because I don't want the previews to be long. If there's going to be a video long, I want it to be this one, the strategy video, which goes through, you know, all the different stats that I care about, that I want you guys to see so you guys can make your own educated decisions, that kind of thing. So when it comes to the best Bermuda golfer in the field, let me scroll up. We have Cameron Young. He only has 2 Bermuda events under his name, or under his belt. You can make with that as you will. I don't care for that. Now, 15.5 is good. He didn't win a tournament that was a Bermuda event. So, you know, it's at least second place. You know, it's as low as second place. I don't remember what his finishes were. But to get to 15.5, that means he either had a second and say a 31st or 32nd place. Well, let's see here. It would be like a second and a 30th, right? No, a 29th. 31 divided by 2 is 15.5. Yeah. So that means he probably has 2 events under 30 for his finishes. So Cameron Young, pretty good choice. And I'll tell you right now, Cameron Young's in my dummy lineup, which I always keep one. I should say this. My dummy lineup is just kind of how it's just my eyeball test. I already liked Cameron Young before looking at these stats. I'm only going to enter that dummy lineup once. So Cameron Young will be there one time in a random contest. But yeah, it looks good. What I would rather do, though, is remove basically anybody who has less than 4 events under their belt. And usually I do exclude 4 events, but let's just say 4 events is the minimum. When we look at this, you got Webb as your number 1 guy. In fact, the guys that you see on the screen, these are your top 20 Bermuda golfers. A lot of high price golfers, as we would anticipate. Yeah, I don't really have anything. I mean, you got Webb, Kuchar, Sung J M, Mark Leishman, and Hideki Matsuyama. Golfers we already talked about, right? No, maybe not Kuchar, but the other 4 we did because they're in the 10K range. So yeah, Kuchar, great Bermuda stats, but remember, this last year was not kind to him. He did well at the match play, as he kind of does most of the time. I'm not confident playing someone like a Matt Kuchar. I don't know. It doesn't feel right. Let's put it that way. The rest of the guys here, decent names. I mean, you have Denny McCarthy, who is known to be good on Bermuda. He has a 24% clip of finishing inside the top 10. So there's that. There's our guy, Billy Horschel. We already talked about him. Yeah, Kevin Kisner. We talked about him. Like, they're really good top 10% clips here. These are their success rates of finishing inside the top 10 at Bermuda tracks. Just remember that. So a lot of good numbers here. In fact, why don't we go ahead and filter by this or sort by it? And you got Webb Simpson at the top again. You have Kevin Kisner, who just won at the Wyndham Championship this last summer/fall. That obviously increased, or it made his overall number better. His 2021 Bermuda, despite winning, not very good. So I don't know if that's just because it was at those stats you can chalk up as perhaps he just didn't play well during a stretch, and these numbers are reflected in there. Just remember, there's a victory in there somewhere, and he has a pretty decent clip of finishing inside the top 10. But here you go. You got a lot of people here with 20% or better success rates on Bermuda. You get a min 6K golfer in Kevin Chappell. Hey, you could do worse. Like I when I saw Kevin Chappell at 6,000, I couldn't believe it. Like it's a far fall from grace for Mr. Chappell, but he has scored really well. He just hasn't played very good or very well in this last year. So keep that in mind. But yeah, you got a lot of good names. You also have a lot of good Korn Ferry golfers, or people that came from the Korn Ferry, like Sai Thigala or Hayden Buckley, Taylor Pendrith, Curtis Thompson. Those are all pretty darn good Korn Ferry graduates. So, you know, fit those in your lineup somehow too. And when we look at 2021 Bermuda, which is, again, just last year's Bermuda, you got Webb up there, 8.17. He obviously he's good on Bermuda. But you also have Cam Smith, who just won last week, which is baked into this number. Cam Smith with the victory last week, good on Bermuda. Corey Connors, it's obviously a guy we've already talked about. Or I shouldn't say we've talked about, the rest of the industry has talked about. A lot of people on Corey Connors this week, which is fine. I mean, he's going to be a good play. Abe Answer, and you can see the rest of the guys. You got Denny McCarthy back up there once again. Brennan Steele, we've talked about him. And Chris Kirk. I like seeing Kirk up there. Kirk is number 20 in my rankings, remember. I do like him. I actually, when we get to the buckets here, I have something to talk about. All the golfers that have Y's next to their name, there's something to talk about with those guys. But those are your grass stats this week. Last week when we looked at this, at most, when we went by overall Bermuda average, we only saw 4 guys from the top 20 finish inside the optimal lineup. So keep that in mind. This isn't a foolproof stat to look at. I shouldn't even say it that way. It's just not a great indicator of success. But yeah, 4 inside the top 20, that's pretty good. But you got to remember, it was a 38-person field. So take that with a grain of salt. And then the other 2 stats that we looked at, we could only find 2 golfers in the optimal lineup inside the top 20 of each of those stats last week. So again, take it with a grain of salt. Which, from here, where I want to go to is looking at our anchor buckets, kind of like a refresher. Now, these updated a little bit because we had a ton of people withdrew. And by a ton, I mean we had like 4 more from the preview video. So I think we're up to like 8 I think we're up to 10 golfers who've withdrawn from this tournament. So those golfers were removed from the rankings, or from my dream sheet, which this here on the screen pulls from, to check out strength of field and which of those golfers are in each of these buckets. So it changes the volumes of the buckets, changes the projections a little bit. So the ones that we talked about yesterday might be a little bit different. Not by much, but it could be a little bit different. So with that being said, first of all, no recent form. We only have 1 tournament. I think we need at least 2 under our belt. Actually, we need at least 3 under our belt before we look at recent form. So what I'm going to do right away, remove that bucket from the list that we're going to talk about. Yeah, I'm just going to show you the anchor buckets. We'll talk a little bit more about the rest of them. So for me, I want the minimum projection to be greater than 0.9. So minimum projection obviously is me saying, if it can get to 1, that means we can assume one of these golfers are going to be inside the top 10. So, and I just say one of the golfers, one of the buckets will be inside the top 10. And each of these buckets holds players. So you choose from those buckets which players you like. It is kind of, it can be a little confusing to people who haven't been with me for a while, that don't really understand it. Totally understand. But if I go 0.9, you're just going to see on the screen, you're going to understand what that means. So like all of these, we can assume one golfer from this bucket will finish inside the top 10. So the anchors this week are pretty large. We have 3 buckets for last year's stats. We have 3 buckets for last week's stats, 2 buckets for course history, 3 buckets for salary, and 4 buckets for strokes gained stats. And I'll explain these quickly and as well as I possibly can. So when you're building your lineups, I think it's important to select one golfer. Let's use the last year buckets here to choose one golfer who has a top 20 the year before. So they played this tournament last year and they top 20'd it. So they have a finishing spot between 1 to 20. Also, golfers who missed the cut, believe it or not. This is why I love the bucket system, because it doesn't just show you how good someone has been at this tournament. It also shows you how bad someone's been at this tournament and top 10 that the following tournament. So that's why I like looking at this. So you want at least one missed cut, and then you want at least one golfer who had not played last year. Now, that includes golfers who do have course history and golfers who do not have course history. I don't have the combinations together just yet, so just keep that in mind. And then when we look at last week buckets, you want someone who top 20'd in the tournament. This is a huge point of contention online. I absolutely love it, because it's like you hear a prominent person say this is one of the stats they hate the most because there's no predictive, there's no, or one of these stats is not predictive. I can't remember how he had phrased it. Like, looking at someone's finish from the week before is not predictive. Well, I hope you guys who've been here quite a bit know that's not true. When you look at a top 10 and each golfer in it, if you consistently see week or year after year after year that playing the year or the week before, finishing inside the top 10 or missed cut, or I should say top 20, missed cut, did not play, if those stats show up a lot, that makes them sticky. Now, I get it. I understand what the thought process this guy had was last week was nothing but winners. Those were guys who had won on the PGA Tour from the week before, making them good golfers. True. You also had what? Which golfers would I say aren't very good? Lucas Herbert. He won an alternate event. Now, he was good enough to win a tournament. Don't get me wrong. Winning is a skill. But he was in the event. Now, when you take him and put him into this field, he doesn't get a higher status just because he won last year. I mean, he withdrew from this tournament, so that's a bad example to use. But let's say he's still in the field. He was $7,200, $7,400. No, I think it was $7,200. Meaning DraftKings didn't rank him that high. None of us were going to rank him that high. But if he were to finish top 10, well, his finish from the week before mattered. And here's my other thing with all this. The reason I look at last week's stats. I'm a competitive player. What I do last week matters. Like, if I do well, that might actually make me feel more comfortable. And then I just don't play well this week. Or I take what I did last week and I'm like, all right, I'm onto something. And I continue my momentum going forward. Are we going to be able to predict which one of those golfers does that? No. That's why it's called the bucket system. Golfers get put into buckets. You get to choose from them. So it's a small list of golfers you select from to say, hey, last week's finish matters. Out of these golfers, who do you think is going to finish inside the top 10? I mean, I'll put $10 on the line and say, I'll pick a random person in the chat or in the comment section. $10 that a last week 2 finishes inside the top 10. Like, we're gonna find one. There's only 10 golfers you can choose from out of a whole field of 144. One of these guys will finish inside the top 10. It's gonna happen. So with that being said, you need to choose one. And by the way, I'm giving you a min-max. I'm saying 1 to 3 golfers from this bucket will finish inside the top 10 out of 10. It's not everybody's going to finish inside the top 10. It's just 1 to 3. And I'm giving you that information so you can make your lineups to be like, yep, I'm only selecting 1 or I'm only selecting 2. Or maybe you just go, I don't care about the stat whatsoever. I don't believe in that nonsense. I don't want to play it. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not here telling you I know. There's 2 things I hate absolutely in this world. One are definitives and one are absolutionists. Like, I can't stand when someone thinks something's absolutely true, and I can't stand when someone thinks something's definitely right or definitively right. which are the same thing, right? It's both of them are 100% true things. I mean, that's why I have projections. I don't know how many golfers are going to finish inside the top 10, but I have an idea, and it's based off of strength of field, and it's based off of how well this bucket's performed in the past. So, long tangent there, I'm sorry, or long rant, but that's, I had to say it. I had to say it because it was on my mind since I heard it. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Stroke gain stats matter, huh? You know, does everybody who gains 3 strokes approach do well at this tournament? And can you verify that? Probably not. Or how about someone who has rolling stats that, you know, over the last 20 rounds have slowly gained off the tee, and this is one of the stats that proves to be vital at this tournament. Do they always finish inside the top 10? Or did they finish inside the top 10? Probably not. There's really none of this like reflective analysis that people just don't do. It's just one of those things that bothers me in this society right now is you can say something egregious today and people forget about it tomorrow. Anyways, okay, now I'm off my soapbox there. Last week threes, 20 to 40, you want somewhere between, okay, so someone who finished last week in that 20 to 40 range, there's 38 golfers. So we have some people in the field that fell into that bucket. There's 11 of them. We want to pick somewhere between 1 to 2. And the rest of them then we pick from the last week 1 buckets, which are golfers who did not play. You can actually make a full lineup of golfers who did not play. And it's possible they could be in the optimal lineup, all 6 of them. But at most, I've only seen 4. Same thing applies for the last week 2s, which are your top 20 finishes from last week. The most we've ever seen in an optimal lineup is 3. So I would kind of, you know, I would curb my ownerships on those. I wouldn't go full 6 golfers in this bucket no matter what. I'd always pick at least 1 out of each of these buckets and then fill in the rest with whomever I felt was right. There are only 2 course history buckets that are in the anchor buckets, and that would be your course history 2s and your course history 1s. That's that 20 to 40 average finishing position for your course history 2s. We want somewhere between 1 to 3 of those guys. And your course history 1s, 40 to 60. Now, these stats go back to 2013. So if you're following me and you're looking for course history stats, only use from 2013 to present day. And whatever their average finishing position, that's how they fall into these buckets. So find golfers in those 2 buckets. And then when we look at salaries, you want at least 1 10K golfer, okay, it's not at least 1 8. It's pretty darn close, 0.97. At least 1 8K golfer, and at least 1 7K golfer. There's something I want to show you guys right now when we're talking about salaries. So I tweeted something like this out during last week's tournament. I'm recording all of the optimal lineups. Like, what were the salaries for each of the optimal lineups? You know, how many golfers were in the 10K range, 9K, 8, 7, 6, and I even broke up the 6K into high 6K, low 6K. So I have all the tournaments here. I've recorded all of them. When it comes to frequencies, how often do they show up in a tournament? You have the numbers on the screen right now. 86% for 7K. So how I will build lineups is I'll take, out of 100 lineups, 86 of them will have at least 1 7K golfer in it. Now, this is just your overall totals from the last year. We can also look at field size. We're at 144 golfers. We can look at our percentages and see 9K is pretty high, not super high. 8K is actually really bad. So we can combine this number to go along with what we have here for projections, and you know, maybe we lower our expectations for that bucket, you know, for the 8K price range. I mean, it's up to you. I like to look at this would be like zooming out and looking at everything as a whole. And then when we go to the tournament, we zoom back in and see, oh, 8K's actually success rate is pretty decent to finish inside the top 10. 50% of the time it's actually been in the optimal lineup. So this is going back to 2017. So we have 4 years of data, meaning 2 out of the last 4 years, we have seen at least 1 8K. That's the max that we have. at least one 8K golfer in the optimal lineup. So, I mean, do with that as you will. But when I like to look at this, I also see like 7K and 6K are super high. So not only do they show up a bunch just overall in all tournaments, but in a field size of 144 golfers, it still shows up pretty highly. And if you want to see the breakdown of high 6K versus low 6K, you got that right here. So for me, I'm probably looking more, like if I'm building lineups, I'm looking more for a 7K, 6K, and pairing it up with a 10K. The 10K percentage isn't very high, but at this tournament, it is. And in fact, our projections for 10K golfers are fairly high, 1.3 to 2.2. That's pretty conservative. Never mind. They're not super high. There's only 5 golfers in that range, and we're almost like projecting at least 2 finishing inside the top 10. And every single year, we've seen 1 in the optimal lineup. So to me, starting with a 10K golfer, going to a 7K and a high 6 is probably the way I'm going to start my builds. And then when we look at strokes gain stats, these are your lead-in strokes gain stats for the year, the prior year. How I have my strokes gain stats, I only look at off the tee and putting, because your approach stats are largely dependent on your off the tee stats. If you're bad off the tee but good on approach, it's probably because you're leaving yourself long distances into the green. Maybe you got yourself in the intermediate rough or even in the primary rough. Putting it to like 10 feet is just going to boost those stats quite a bit. Now, there are golfers who have positive approach and positive off the tee. Those are going to be your good golfers regardless. But either way, to me, off the tee dictates everything. It dictates, it dictates the cascade of the strokes gain stats. So off the tee is really important, and then putting is how frequently do you get the ball in the hole. Putting stats, it takes into account a lot of different things. It's not just, who makes 40-foot bombs. It's also who makes 10 consecutive 4-foot putts, believe it or not. So anyways, those are the stats I look at. Strokes gain 1, everything's positive. Strokes gain 2, positive off the tee, positive putting. 1 negative stat in between. Could be approach, could be around the green. Strokes gain 3, positive off the tee, negative putting, and any stat in between. It could be positive, could be negative once again. And same thing applies for strokes gain 4, but you were looking at negative off the tee and positive putting. Those are 4 anchor buckets because the strokes gain stats are pretty watered down of golfers you want inside the top 10. And we're looking at somewhere between 1 to 2 for most of them. But the bucket system actually likes the negative off the tee, positive putting guys. So that's one way to look at it. Each one of these is just a minimum of 1. That's the only one that has a max of 3, and you can almost say it's a max of 4 because I always say round up. So that's your breakdown for the anchor buckets. Let's see, what else do I want to say here? I think that's about it. I think we can get into lineup building now. Actually, one thing. Well, okay, I got one more thing. One of the followers to SweetSpotDFS reached out and had asked, had I ever used the buckets to remove golfers? And the short answer is yes. So if I were to go to the dream sheet and actually let's use one of these buckets. So let me remove this filter. And actually, why don't we go the opposite way? Why don't we go less than or equal to 0.7? Okay. And then remove zeros from here, because obviously those are golfers that aren't in the bucket. So one good one to look at to take, some of these have really small numbers and it's just going to be hard to use. Let's use a large bucket. So let's say course history 6s, golfers who have not played this tournament. We're basically saying 0 to 1 golfer. There's 34 of them. So if I go to the dream sheet, I filter out by course history 6s, and just take a look at some of these golfers. Most of these guys are going to be first, you know, they're going to be Korn Ferry graduates. They're going to be maybe actually, Denny McCarthy. Is this his first time playing here for real? I want to double check that. I don't think that's true. I'd be very disappointed if my stats. Yeah, it's his first time playing here since 2013. Okay, perfect. It's a good one to use, and I'm sorry somehow it scrolled all the way down for those that are visually inclined. Yeah, so Denny McCarthy, first time playing here. He's not a young guy by any means, and he's not a Korn Ferry graduate, but he's in here with a bunch of other Korn Ferry graduates. We're looking at somewhere between 0 to 1, which means you can look at this whole list of golfers, copy them over just once, and be good with it. You know, just play each one of these guys just once, and then you don't even have to think about it. Maverick McNeely's in this one too. He's not a Korn Ferry graduate either, but yeah, I mean he is, but not from this last year. Christian Bezuidenhout's in here as well. I mean, so this is where I would limit it. I would never play like a Maverick with a Christian. And by the way, I would never combine any of these golfers together. So that's one way I can limit my lineups. And if I like Cameron Young a bunch, then I can X out every single golfer that's in this bucket. So there's what, 33, maybe 34 of these golfers. If I select one from it, I can remove the rest of them. Because to me, this bucket's never going to have more than one. If there is, there's a 1% chance that it's going to happen. That's kind of how I look at my projections. There's a 1% chance this has at least 2, but it'll never have 3. And I think it's probably easy to build your lineups that way, or build your lineups without this bucket, because most of them are in the 6K range. But let's say I do like Cameron Young. Guess what? I'm not going to pair him up with any of these golfers up top. And that's fine. I will live and die by what the bucket system gives me. Like, there are reasons to play these guys. Don't get me wrong. Maverick McNeely, super quality golfer. But if I just have a better take on Cameron Young than I do Maverick McNeely, I'm just not going to play Maverick McNeely. So this is one way to remove it. But this week is probably a bit more difficult to remove, you know, golfers based off a bucket, because there's no really stark contrast. I mean, maybe last week buckets, and maybe this is actually a good example to use. So your last week ones, there's 123 of them. We're projecting somewhere between 3 to 6. You can make a hard stance and say, you know what? I only think 3 golfers at most are going to finish inside the top 10 from this list of golfers. So you could probably handpick your guys. Like, oh yeah, I like Webb, I like Russell Henley, and I like Chris Kirk. Those are my 3 guys. Well, guess what? Now you can remove 130 golfers from your list of guys, or 120. I'm sorry. And you can see some of the names that are up here. And there's that Maverick McNeely guy once again. So maybe that's another reason not to play Maverick McNeely. And I think Cameron Young is in here. So if you'd like Cameron Young and you only think 3 golfers from this bucket are going to finish inside the top 10, then you can go Cameron Young, Chris Kirk, Webb Simpson, and say screw the rest. With that, I mean, you probably have your own limitations based off of how much you want to own any of these golfers in your lineups. And if that's the case, that's awesome, because that's how I like to build my lineups. If I put 20% Webb Simpson, then obviously that limits the amount of times I play Webb, and so on and so forth. But if you're a single entry type of person, you only build one lineup, I would look at this bucket and go and just make a firm stance. 3.26 to 5.44. Again, I say round down on the minimum, so it'd be 3, round up on the max, 6, but maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to round up with this number, 4, round down with that number, 5. So you want somewhere between 4 to 5 golfers from this bucket. Well, take your choice, you know, and then you get to remove the rest of the guys. So then all you're working with, so you pick your 3 or your 4 or your 4 or 5 golfers from there. And now you just have this small list of golfers to fill in the rest. Or maybe you start here and you go to that other bucket and fill in the rest. So those are kind of my strategies. I like to build 100 unique lineups. So my ownership is or when it comes to the buckets, I will follow the bucket logic, and that's the wonderful thing about the optimizer is you can do that here. And I actually have those numbers already planted in. So when you receive this, it's going to have my criteria, my conditionals in there. You can easily change this to like 6. So you can get just a, so here, I'll show you the difference. So if I run this optimizer, and I think the lineup on the screen right now is just going to be the lineup, which isn't a bad lineup. Pretty good. Okay, yep. Oh, no, it did change. So we have Mark Leishman, Billy Horschel, Seamus Power, Bren Steele, Siwoo Kim, Keegan Bradley. If I change this all to 6s, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy and paste this right next to it because I don't want to lose those numbers. So I can put this all to 6s. A nice little trick on Excel if you didn't know this already. You can copy this cell here, click into this one, and then hold Shift and then left click down here. And then go back up to the top here, right click, go to this 1, 2, 3 values only, and all of them will turn 6. So a nice little Excel trick for those that don't know that. So now everything is even. There's no conditionals there with the buckets. When I run this, I'm going to get a different result. And some of the players changed. Mark Leishman still stays up at the top, which is really surprising. I wouldn't have thought that was going to happen, but hey, it did. So yeah, I like to use the conditionals because just, I mean, it's giving me 2 8K golfers. I already know I don't want to play 2 8K golfers. I just want to play 1. So I can go down here and change it. Darn, I didn't copy these. I think it was 2, 2, 1, 3, 1, something like that. And run the optimizer like this, and that way it won't select, you know, an additional 8K. It actually selected 3 6 or 3 7s, which I absolutely love this lineup. This is a really good lineup in my opinion. So anyways, that's kind of my long-winded answer to that. Gabriel, I think it was Gabriel Brown that asked that question. So yeah, let's go ahead and build some lineups. Now, already kind of went through the optimizer and showing you everything here when it comes to like how to change this and what the 2 optimal lineups were. But let's say you really want Cam Smith. I mean, what I like to do, how I start this is I look at my Marquee Tee Time pairings. So I'll go ahead, filter out by that, go to game and make sure this is all in order. So I will look here and say, you know what, Billy Horschel, I like him a lot. Let me pair him up with Cameron Smith. And so I'm going to choose these 2. Now, what I tend to do is make sure the rest of these golfers are X'd out. So when I go to the optimizer, I know I want Cameron Smith, and I already forgot who the other guy was. It's such a bad short-term memory. Billy Horschel. So it's those guys. Now I know I don't want the rest of the guys. So Abe Answer, Harris English, Hideki Matsuyama. So all the 10K guys I can cross out. All the 9K guys I can cross out, and most of the 8Ks. So it makes it super simple. So I can just go no. And then there you can use Excel's tricks here. This little tab down here. Super nice, super helpful. And scroll down. Yeah, each one of those guys are in the Marquee Tee Times. And then who else do we have? Who are in the 8s? Power, Kisner, Cam Davis, Charles Howell III, and Matt Jones. Let's see if I can even remember that. We'll start with Matt Jones. Cam Davis, Charles Howell III, and Seamus Power. Hey, we remembered. So I can just cross these guys out because I know they're in the Marquee Tee Time pairings, and I know I only want 2. You can go up to 3, you can go up to 4. It's up to you guys, but I know I want at least 2, and I want to exclude everybody else. So now it builds me a lineup based off that criteria, which is great. It's another good lineup. Like, I have no issue with that. I can also use the max ownership here on the side to make sure I don't get duplicates. So Cam Smith and Billy Horschel will stay up at the top, and then it'll select another one. Ryan Palmer, Siwoo Kim, you know, and you can go on and go for however you want if you do take this optimizer. Now, last week was really annoying to me. Like, the optimizer is really good if you go one lineup at a time. I know I have this run and save 950-90. Excel just does not work well with trying to find unique lineups. There's no way that I can code it to do so. The parameters, the conditions become too many, so I can't, because ultimately what you'd want to do is keep track of the lineup that was built, and then I think what I have over here is a dupe thing here. I would want the conditionals to be here, but a lot of times it just doesn't work, and I know this is going to be busy work here, but this is the computer behind the optimizer, all of this information here. I can create another, I tried to create another column that has dupes, and it would, you know, if there was a duplicate lineup, whoever was chosen would then show as a 1, and then that would tell the optimizer you can't select those golfers. You have to try again. It didn't work out that well, unfortunately. There is another way I can think about doing it, but it's just going to take some time. And you would have to tell the optimizer who your top 16 golfers are, basically. And it would go through all the different combinations that you can build of those 16 guys. And you can also use the ownership here to go with it. But it's a lot of work for an Excel spreadsheet. But like I was saying, if you were to use it as an individual lineup and you changed all the criteria as you were going, where you're like, you know what, I want a Hideki Matsuyama lineup, I want a Kevin Kisner lineup, to, you know, both those guys together, and I only want 110K, don't give me more than that, and I only want 19K, don't give me more than that, and then we can have 2 8Ks. And then you hit run optimize, it'll spit something out, you can save it, and then go on and change your criteria elsewhere. So that's super simple. Here's my strategy for the week. Once this loads, it's trying to create a lineup right now. Okay. Here was my strategy last week, and here's gonna be my strategy this week as well. When we look at this DFS ownership, salary frequencies, it should say per optimal lineup, well, actually in the optimal lineup is fine. I'm looking at this pretty hard. I know I want 7Ks and I want 6Ks in my lineup. That 6K breakdown is going to be very similar to this. I don't think, based off of this tournament and based off the bucket system for this tournament, I don't think I really want a lot of 6Ks. You know, for optimal lineups, we've only seen one for the high 6K and the low 6K, a max of one time. And it even gets worse than that. Your high 6K range, we've only seen the optimal lineup 25% of the time, which is 1 out of 4 years. And for the low 6K, we've only seen a 50%, which is 2 out of 4 years. So it's definitely not a forgiving. Those are 2 salaries that aren't very forgiving this week. So with that being said, I think what I'm going to do is basically take kind of an in-between. So 25% and this 76.92%. I'm going to take an in-between there, which is going to be like 50%. So I have another spreadsheet that I like to use to build lineups. It's pretty nifty. So what I like to do here, it basically, if I put Billy Horschel right here, it keeps track of how much salary I have left per person. This is what I used to do before the optimizer. I would hand build lineups. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take between the high 6, so that's 6'9", all the way to 6'5", your last 6'5". There's 32 golfers there. I'm going to copy each one of them over here and paste it. And then I have basically, I'm getting to a 50 number. I'm building 100 lineups. I want 50 of those lineups to have a high 6K golfer in it. So with that being said, I'm going to try to find 18 more golfers that I like. So I can go Thompson, I don't mind. Sabatini, I don't mind. Snedeker, I don't mind. Swafford, Young, Libiota, Glover, Sahi. Oh, I want to hit Stanley, Hickok, Malnati. I don't care about Graham McDowell. That's fine. Vince Whaley, as his name is. Nick Hardy is a really good choice. Mark Hubbard. I have 14. I need to pick 4 more. I like Steven Yeager. I don't mind Roger Sloan. Ryan Moore's a good choice. And with Andrew Putnam. I really don't care. We'll select all those guys, paste them right here. And now I have my 50. My 50 were created, I believe, right? Yeah, okay. So I didn't paste them all the way up at the top. Yep, I have 50. Here's a great thing about Google Sheets. Go to 100, line up 100 or 101, I should say. Select the cell where all those 6K golfers are. Hold down Shift, left click. That'll select that entire range. And just to show you guys, the whole range is selected that I wanted from cell 2 to 101. Right click in here, and Google Sheets has this randomize range thing. You randomize and they all get placed in different spots, which is fine. I like that. From here, what I'll do is I'll grab all the low 6K golfers, and that's going to be a little different in my opinion. I don't care about the 50% mark here. 50 and 50, I guess we're just going to do 50-50 again, once again. And I'll build lineups that way. I will say this. I probably would be more inclined to start with the 7K range, if I'm being completely honest. I know I just went through all those 6Ks. For me, 7K is way more important than the 6K. 6K, I can just, throw in golfers. I want all of my lineups to be around $50,000. And if I have too many 6K golfers, it just isn't going to work. So I think I can still leave this here, and then I can fill in the rest with the low 6K golfers. But I probably would handpick a lot of these low 6Ks. I wouldn't just do what I did with the high 6s. The high 6s, I think you can just randomize completely. You could with the low 6s, but I think there's just easy ones you can completely just write off. Now that I look at it, there's some good ones. I would probably write off a Luke Donald, a Ben Coles, Michael Gligic, not terrible, but I'd probably write him off as well. Same goes with Parker McLaughlin. Yeah, so that I'm not gonna go through all these guys. I probably even write off Jimmy Walker. Like, there's some guys I just would not play in that low 6K range. So I don't know how many I would play of them, but I'll say this: the more and more that I actually build lineups and look at the optimal lineups every single week, I'll keep this. I like this. The more and more I create lineups each week, the more and more I see your 6K range. And this is another thing that I've been keeping track of. I'm looking at ownership's salary tiers and stuff like that. It's gotten me on frequencies and stuff like that. Your 6K range is your complete random range. If you were to go and look at the lowest owned, if you just went lowest owned, you're not going to find any success. If you find the highest owned, you're going to find very little success there as well. A little bit more than the lowest owned, but 6K range just goes to show you that nobody can predict the 6K range. It is the most volatile range in golf. This is your dart throw. This is your random, like, if you create, if you hand build your lineups one by one, player 1 through 5, hand select. That's fine. Player 6, just put them in a random generator and let the computer pick them. Because it's going to be completely random. It could be any of these 6K golfers that will finish inside the top 10 and maybe win this tournament. I think you probably should spend less time looking at the 6K range. I would say this: spend less time playing this or looking at the 6K range, but more time playing it if you aren't already. But yeah, that's kind of my strategy this week as I'm going to play. I definitely want to play, you know, the 6K range as I showed you, the high 6, the low 6. I definitely want to look at my 7K golfers. That's definitely, yeah, 7K I feel comfortable with. I'll probably play at least one 7K golfer in 90 out of 100 lineups. And it's not just based off of this number. It's also looking at just the salary bucket. It's a high bucket to choose from. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say. I probably will do a mix between, I mean, the optimizer is just a great way to utilize the buckets, which I probably will do. I'm going to have to try to figure out a way to just randomize the 6K range the best I can. Not that important, but it kind of is. So I think that's it. I don't have anything else to talk about. We're at an hour, which is perfectly fine. That's what I want these strategy videos to be. You know, it's going over everything and providing all the strategies we possibly can. We have a full field event, 144 golfers. We have a cut. So we're looking at top 65 in ties. If you want to win a GPP, you're going to have to play some random players, especially in the 6K range. That's just my feelings. It's also what the data kind of proves. Yeah. Okay. Just a reminder, giveaways. Again, all you gotta do is be subscribed. Leave a comment down below. The topic was, who are your 2 anchor plays this week? That'll get you a free entry into the $10 giveaway that hopefully I'll be doing Sunday, as long as we get 5 more subscribers. Hopefully that happens. And then also Prize Picks. If you haven't signed up with it, there's a link in the description. Go ahead, utilize it, and get yourself a free $20. You get to play for free. But that's all I have for you guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I will see you in a review video. All right, bye.